Hey y'all, so today we're going to be talking about intercepts and like an introduction to it. But before we do that, I'm just going to review a little over previous chapters. So first we're going to identify what these graphs are. So this is continuous and this is discrete because it has points that are not connected, but continuous because there are points, but they are connected by this curved line. And continuous graphs can also be straight lines. I just mentioned curved lines, so you notice that it's not just a line. It's curved, it's a parabola. Okay, the next thing we're going to be talking about is the different types of forms, just as review. So there's standard form versus the regular mx plus b. So standard is ax plus by equals c, whereas this is just equal to y. So a, b, and c are just number values, and then x and y are obviously x and y. And same goes for here, except m is called the slope, and b is called y-intercept, which is actually what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Okay. So now, about intercepts. They get a little complicated, to be honest, because sometimes it can confuse you which thing they're talking about, which I remember that it was weird when I learned it, but anyways. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is the x-intercepts. So the x-intercepts is when the, x-intercept is when the y value is equal to 0. So the thing about this is, so whenever you're graphing something, you have to be able to identify when the y is 0 and when the x is going to 0. In comparison to this, when the, that's just a line. The y-intercept is when the x value is 0. So first I'm going to explain this by finding the x and y intercepts and solving. So in order to solve this, I'm going to put down an equation. Okay, so all we're going to do now is, in order to find the x-intercept, you need to replace, like right here. Just know when it says x-intercept, it means the opposite is 0. So x's opposite is y, so that's 0. Same goes for the y-intercept. X value is the opposite, so it's 0. So now we're just going to replace, we're trying to find the x-intercept, sorry. So all we're going to do is we're going to replace the y with the 0, because the y value has to be 0. So this gets canceled out because 2 times 0 is 2. So 3x is equal to 6. So that means x, you divide 3 on both sides, x is equal to 2. So that is the x-intercept. When you graph it, it'll go like this. When y is 0, x will be 2 right here. It'll be graphed like that. Okay, so now we're going to find the y-intercept. These intercepts are very important because it can also be like a little placement holder for you to identify which way the line is going. So like if you don't want to go through all the trouble and like finding -1, 0, 1, 2, 3 and like finding all those values, you can just find the x-intercepts for these line equations, and then you can just connect those dots together and then make a line. Okay. So now, instead, we're going to replace x with 0 because when it's the y-intercept, the x value has to be 0. Okay, so you do minus 2y equals 6. So this time, this goes to 0 because 3 times 0 is 0. And then you divide by -2. Remember, always have the negative with it because it's not just a 2. The negative is with it right here. So y is equal to 6 divided by 2 is 3, but since there's a negative, a positive divided by a negative stays negative. So 6 divided by -2 is -3. So this is the y-intercept. So let me explain what I meant by it can be a placeholder for you. So now, when you're graphing, when x is 0, y is -3 right here. And now you can just, you can just connect the dots and make a line. So it's much easier to solve for and make lines, especially because when one of the values is 0, literally half of the equation is thrown out because it's a number times 0, which goes to 0. So it's automatically gone. Okay, we're going to do another example, but this is like a little word problem. I'm given the equation, so I'm just going to write it down. 4,500 minus 300x is equal to f of x. Okay, so now they're saying find the x-intercepts. In these kinds of equations, it is important to find the x-intercept because it shows, so this equation is about a distance from the peak of a mountain. So, and this is about a tramway. So like, you know, those trams that you go up into the mountain if you want to ski down and stuff. So the thing about this is it is important to find the x-intercept because if it's the, it's important to find the y-intercept because when you're finding the y-intercept, and one of the questions is literally like, what is the height of the peak? This is the answer. The y-intercept is the answer because that is literally the top, or it is at the lowest point. If you're doing like the y-intercept is 0, that means like money starts off as 0 and like doubles or whatever. And the x-intercept is needed because in this the x-axis is actually time. So we need to know how long it takes for the tramway to come down. So this is the x-intercept right here. It'll be like somewhere around there. So it can show that the distance from the tramway to the peak linearly decreases throughout time. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're just going to solve for the x-intercept first to show how much time it took, and then we're going to solve for the y-intercept to show that it's like a dash number of meters to the peak when it starts. Okay, so 450, why do I keep saying that? 4,500 minus 300x is equal to 0 because we are finding the x-intercept, which means the opposite has to be 0. So the y has to be 0. First, you're going to subtract, or I like to keep the 300s and like that number beside x positive. So I'm just going to add 300x to make it positive. Now, all you're going to do is divide 300 so that x can equal 15. Okay, so this is the x-intercept, so that means it took 15 minutes for the tram to reach the peak. Okay, now we are going to find the y-intercept. 4,500 minus 300 times 0 this time, because remember f of x is actually y. It's just called that because it's a function of x. Okay, and this is 0 because the y-intercept's opposite is the x, which is supposed to be 0. So this whole thing with the negative gets canceled out. And you're left with 4,500 is the y-intercept, which shows that the 4,500 meters to the peak is when the tramway starts, right here. So that's how you can make a straight line coming down, and then it proves that it's a line function, except you know where it's starting and how much time it's taking. Okay, we're going to do one more problem, and then I will stop there. This is the standard form of this random equation. There's a lot of fractions, so if you want, because finding x and y intercepts, like I said before, you literally cancel out one of them, so you honestly can just leave it in standard form. If you want to, you can change it to the other form, which is just the mx plus b form. So if you wanted to do that, it would turn into 3 over, oh sorry. Okay, but I'm going to just keep it in this other form because it looks easier. Okay, so all we're going to do now is we are going to make the y 0 because we're finding the x-intercept first. It's 3. So now this gets canceled out. You'll multiply this by 4 over 3 because it's a reciprocal. The 3's get canceled out. The x-intercept is 4. Now, we're going to do the y-intercept. Okay. So, same thing here, except all we're going to do is we're going to make the x 0. So we're multiplying by 2 to cancel it out. Okay, so this just shows that when you draw it in a certain way, 4 right here, 6 right here, the line will go like that. Whenever a line is going down, it is showing that the slope is negative, which is how, you know how right here I solved it? You see this m right here? M is the slope, and since it's negative, the line is going down. But if a line goes like this right here, it is showing that it is positive. So pretend this was the mx plus b, it would be like a 2x plus b, or x plus b. Okay, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.